Hey everybody, welcome back to the Nerd Nest. It's Bill, it's Russ, it's just the two of us today. Carrie's at work, I think, and Rich couldn't make it, and we are also a day late because Rich sent a message and he's like, hey, I can't make it this week. So then I sent a message to the group saying, hey, are you guys, who's good for this week? And Russ, you were like, I'm good, I could do it.
Good.
But I should have said, who's good for Sunday, because then Sunday rolled around and everybody was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh no, I phrased it poorly. But Russ, how's your week been going, man?
Good, man. You know, it's funny. I think summer's the perfect time for you and I because you're basically out of work right now, and I'm always out of work. I just work on YouTube videos, and so it makes sense. You know, we're the two lazy layabouts compared to, you know, Rich and Carrie who have actual jobs during the summer at least.
We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today, but I wanted to start off with I was going to make a video talking about this, but you know, I just kept getting like behind working on stuff, so I haven't yet done it, but I figured now would be a good time to chat about installing Windows on your Steam Deck. We've talked a lot about in the past using SteamOS like operating systems on devices that ship with Windows. But for me, I've never really had that much interest in installing Windows on the Steam Deck. But I know that there's a lot of people out there that, A, they want Game Pass. Game Pass is it's just a really, really great deal.
Yep.
B, they like to play online multiplayer games that may have anti-cheat, stuff like that. And C, there's just a few other games that don't work on a Steam Deck. And so those are reasons why you might want to install Windows. Well, you know, last week we had this news that Valve was still working on Windows stuff. And then like the next day it came out, oh, here's the drivers, by the way, for the OLED Steam Deck, which was a really strange way because they had just got done talking to The Verge that they were still working on Windows stuff. And then they dropped a bunch of Windows stuff. So now we have Bluetooth drivers, Wi-Fi drivers, a bunch of different stuff. And so now it looks like it's, you know, something that you can do. Still no dual boot, but you can now install Windows on an OLED Steam Deck. And I'm curious, Russ, is that something that you are interested in doing?
You know, it's something that I've always read about and kind of followed, like kind of on the side, but I honestly don't have a lot of interest in it. I think part of it is it's a two-part thing. Number one, I just like the SteamOS experience, and it just always feels weird to go back a little bit to go to Windows, you know. Like even now, these new drivers that just dropped, they also mention in like a subtweet, they're like, oh, and by the way, audio doesn't work. Like you can't actually hear anything out of the speakers. You got to use headphones or Bluetooth. So it's like already there's a big compromise right there because I like to use the speakers, obviously. And so it's always been like this thing where it's like, yeah, if you want, to try Windows, you can, you know, but you may not like it. And so that's always been just enough for me not to be totally sold on it. And then the other part is that I am probably not like most other people in that I've got a lot of handhelds. I've got a lot of Windows handhelds. And the idea of putting Windows on my Steam Deck would probably only appeal to me if I only had one handheld and it was the Steam Deck. And I was missing out on whatever I could get on Windows that I couldn't on the Steam Deck, you know. So Destiny 2 is always my primary example. And so, yeah, if I only had a Steam Deck, I probably would have done it already. But considering that I just have, like, I'm in this really lucky position where I've already got, you know, Windows handhelds, it hasn't really been a thing that's risen to the top. Like, I remember, like, the Super Nintendo Classic's a great example. You remember that, like, the little micro console, you know?
Yeah.
So
I got
that.
two of them. They're great.
Yeah, they're amazing. And I bought one, you know, this is all pre-Retro Game Core, right? And I bought one and I was like, this is amazing. This is everything I could ever want. And then some article, something somewhere told me about jailbreaking. And then I lost a month of my life jailbreaking and putting just random games that played like crap on that thing. You know what I mean? Like, I want to play Simpsons Arcade and I can only do it on this thing for some reason, you know? And so I went down that rabbit hole and I tried to change my user experience on a thing that was already great. And I made it so much worse by trying to like pigeonhole all that kind of stuff or shoehorn it in, you know? And so that's kind of what I feel like with the Steam Deck. Is if I only had that, yeah, I totally would. But because I have other options, I might as well just do the thing that's the best on each platform.
You know, you remind me of a story. This is a long time ago now. I don't remember how long it was, but like when we first got like the new version of smartphones. Like I got the first iPhone, and then I upgraded to the 3G, and then I upgraded to the 4, and then I bought a Galaxy Note 2 because it had a bigger screen, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to try that. And obviously that runs Android. And then what ended up happening is at some point I decided that I wanted to install. Yeah, Google had put out like this new version of Android, and Samsung was like, well, you're going to wait for that. We got to approve stuff, and AT&T, which was my carrier at the time, had to approve stuff. So I had to wait for the double approval, or I could jailbreak it and install all that stuff myself, which I did. And just like you, I ended up with a worse experience because like my SD card thing, because this is back when they all had SD cards and stuff, like that wasn't working. I had so many issues that I just ended up going back to the original. And I got to be honest, I don't know if I ever got it back to
the original state.
Like the original state where it was where it worked the way that I had wanted it to. That was the last time. I mean, that was my fault for throwing my own software on there. But that was the last time I bought an Android phone, because like I tried to do the thing that everybody always says that you can do with Android. You can do whatever you want with it. I tried to do that, and it just kind of caused problems for me. And I was like, all right, this is not for me. I'm just going to buy an iPhone again and go back to it, which I know there's Android versus iPhone people. Fight in the comment section if you want. I'm not responding to you. Because both systems are good anyway. But that just, you reminded me of that. As far as installing Windows on the Steam Deck, I wouldn't do it to my OLED, just because that one, for the same reason that when I got the OLED, I didn't put a case on it. And when I got the OLED, I didn't open it up and try messing around inside like I did with the LCD deck, because I want to keep that, pristine. I want it to work exactly the way that it's supposed to work, because, well, I use it for work all the time. You know what I mean? For my channel. So I don't think I would do it to the OLED. I might do it to the LCD. In fact, I even have considered, like I've added this to my Amazon cart a few times, as adding a 2230 M.2 drive, because I don't want to try and erase it. I'm just, I would, if I was going to do it, I would buy a 2230 drive, open it up, put Windows on it, put it in there, put Windows on it, and just have that be the operating system that I would use. But it seems like a lot of work to do something that I probably don't really care about, because if I'm playing Game Pass, I'm playing on a computer or Xbox. If I'm playing those online multiplayer games, I'll just play it on a computer instead of playing on, because those are the kind of games where I feel like playing competitively on a 7-inch screen or 7.5-inch screen, or whatever the size of the screen is on the OLED Steam Deck, it's just not the way that you want to play, at least for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Like it is definitely a compromised experience when you put it all together. Like I actually do really enjoy playing Destiny on a handheld, but I do not play it competitively. I just go and I run like strikes, which are just like 20-minute playlist things. And so I'm not doing PvP. Like I'm nothing that's like matters to me, and I'm just wasting time. And so I do enjoy that handheld experience. But I just don't see enough of a reason to really go to Windows, which is funny because on the opposite side, like putting Bazite on my Ally X is an improvement. Like it's something that, like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, just use Steam Big Picture and stuff like that. But I'm like, but you could also have like an entire ecosystem right there with like a sleep function that works. There's like a lot of reasons why like putting Linux on a Windows handheld makes a lot more sense to me than putting Windows on a Linux handheld.
Yeah, just yesterday, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit later on in the show. Final Fantasy, I didn't even add this to the show notes. Final Fantasy 16 was, there's like a demo available on Steam. And so the first thing that I did was I installed it on my ROG Ally X, my Lenovo Legion Go, and the Steam Deck. And I tried it on all three. The ROG Ally X does the best at running it, but it like has some kind of graphical errors, and we'll talk more about that later on in the show maybe. But the thing about it was when I ran it on the Legion Go, which is the only Windows handheld that I'm running right now, I got a pop-up that said your drivers are not compatible with this game. Like that kind of stuff never seems to happen on SteamOS or on, and I was all updated and everything, and it got a little pop-up telling me you can't play this because of whatever reason. Wow. Same thing happened on my laptop, so I updated drivers and that was fine. But the Legion Go updating to the latest whatever did not fix that issue. It still ran, but I don't know what was happening because it was just not running well, and the frame rates on the Steam Deck and the Lenovo Legion Go were really bad.
Oh, really? So none of the handhelds were playable for the most part then?
So, okay, I would say it depends because I'm running Bazite on the ROG Ally X. Maybe that's one of the reasons that I was having the issues that I was having. But like you would see characters talking and like the background behind them would disappear and then reappear, or like one of the characters wearing like this big old jacket and the jacket would just turn into a bunch of polygons or vanish or something and then come back mid-sentence. It was like some kind of weird bug, which obviously that's the kind of thing that can be fixed. And I was like, okay, maybe that's happening because I'm running Bazite instead of Windows. But then
it's possible. It sounds almost like a shader compilation too. You know, I see that all the time in emulation where like objects start appearing, you know, because it takes a little bit of time to cache. So it might have been that too.
No, it didn't seem like a shader compilation.
Oh, really?
It wasn't pop-in. It was like as the characters are moving over terrain, like there's a big rock there and they put their foot on the rock and then the rock disappears for a second and then comes back. It almost feels like there's some kind of graphical bug. I loaded it up on my laptop.
Yeah.
I was running it at 4K, 60 frames per second on my TV. Looked great. No issues.
Nice.
So it doesn't seem like it's a poorly optimized game, but it feels like, and I could be wrong about this because I am not somebody who usually delves deep into, you know, the hardware stuff, but I feel like maybe it's a game that needed more RAM. And, you know, the fact that the Lenovo Legion Go and the Steam Deck both have 16 gigs of RAM. Am I correct?
I think it was like 14 with the Steam Deck. But yeah, you're right. It's like less than the Ally, definitely.
Yeah, the Ally X has 24. And so I think maybe that's why that ran a little better. But then you had all of those weird issues. It's something I'm definitely going to look at into more because that's a big game. And I think that I think that if we start seeing more of these games that don't run on these handhelds, then it might be time to get more powerful handhelds, which that's not something anybody wants to hear, you know?
Yeah, no, I just checked. It's 16 gigs of RAM on the Steam Deck. But for Final Fantasy 16, I want to play that on a handheld. Like I didn't buy the PS5 version because I wanted like the just the versatility I have on PC. And so I was kind of waiting for that. And the primary thing for that is I've always wanted like a good solid RPG to play on a handheld. And I've just never gotten around to playing any of them. I keep saying, oh, well, I'll replay Final Fantasy X or whatever, you know, but man, I never finished the Final Fantasy X in the first place, like on the PS2. So what means that like now when I have less time and less patience, am I going to be able to play that same game, you know? And so for me, yeah, I think that 16, like that's one of those where I might actually buy it and play through. Like it just seems like a whole complete package for me. Final Fantasy 7 is another one. The remake, I've been trying to run through it. But it's hard because it feels, I already know it's a third of a game, you know, even once I finish it, I've got another one to wait on, and then I got another one to wait on after that. And so that kind of sucks the energy out of me as well. Final Fantasy 16 is like, okay, this is just a complete storyline. It's new, it's modern, you know, it's got really nice graphics. I played the demo. I thought the battle system was pretty good for me because there's a lot of button mashing, which I like. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like that feels like it will be the good fit for me, but I want to play it on a handheld.
Do you feel like you want to play it on a handheld just because you're more likely to continue playing? Or like, so when the Nintendo Switch came out, we hadn't had handheld games in a long time. I played way more games than I did before the Nintendo Switch came out, just because I could play it anywhere in my house. Is that what makes you want to play a game like this that's 70 plus hours on a handheld?
Yeah, like it's exactly it. It's like I can play the game when I'm ready, as opposed to, like, because I don't want to sit at my couch and only play the game there. I mean, I've got a PS Portal, and I probably should have used that. And the fact that I didn't even think of that probably says something about the PS Portal. But and which I still love, but it just never really rises to that, to the point of buying a game so that I can play it on the PS Portal. But the idea of being able to, okay, sitting at my desk, I got 20 minutes to kill. Let's knock out a little bit of Final Fantasy 16 here at my desk on my computer, and then I can resume that same game on my Steam Deck or whatever other handheld that has Steam Cloud enabled. Like, that all sounds great to me, and that's exactly what I want to do.
Another experience that I ran into, and this might change your mind about this, is, I don't know if you've ever run into this, but have you ever been playing a game on, let's say, you're a nice computer, like your more expensive computer, you're playing at 4K or 1080 or, a higher resolution, maybe 1440p or something. And then you grab your handheld and Steam Cloud Sync somehow syncs across your game's settings as well as your save games. So when you load up the game, it's too big to fit on the screen. Does that happen to you?
All the time. So Final Fantasy VII does that. It just annoys me to no end. So I've learned,
does 16.
Basically, yeah. So when I'm like sitting at my desk and I've just finished my 4K gaming session, I go back and switch it to 1080p and then close the game. So that way, when the next time I open it up, I've got the option, like I can actually see things and I don't get everything bogged down by trying to run it in 4K.
Well, you're going to have to do that exact same thing on Final Fantasy 16, because I was playing it on the laptop hooked up to my TV over there, 4K 60, running great. And then I grabbed a handheld and I turned it on to test it, and it was like so large. Luckily, the handheld that I grabbed it on was the Legion Go, which has the what's their software called?
Oh, I don't know.
Legion Space. In the Legion Space software, you can bring up like a command center and very quickly change the resolution. So I was able to increase the resolution to like 1600p or whatever it is on the Legion Go. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's it.
But that made it big enough so that I could see the options button so that I could select it, because otherwise I was like, I don't know what to do. Same thing happened to me with The Witcher. The Witcher 3. I'd be playing on a big screen and then go into a handheld and it would be, nope, you can't do anything until you adjust your stuff.
Yeah, Elden Ring does that, but not every time, sometimes. But I just learned how many button presses to press in order to get to the settings and change it. So,
well, hey, listen, I can't speak for Russ, but I personally would like a console-like experience where I don't have to deal with that stuff very much. And for the most part, like Steam and SteamOS gives that to me. But there's always just those couple of little things like we were just talking about, where like cloud syncing, not just save games, but also your settings, really frustrating. And I would really like to see Valve find a way to separate. I know that it's possible because it doesn't happen on every game. I would like to see Valve find a way to force devs to separate the cloud saves from the settings, so that, if I'm playing on a handheld and I go and play on my big TV, I don't have to change it from a 720p resolution again.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes I like that. Doom Eternal is a good one where it saves my settings, but when you get to the front screen, no matter what aspect ratio and settings, like resolution you set it to, it will still appear correctly. Even if it's like, it bugged out and went to 480p or something like that, the front screen will still look fine. And so that's one where they got it right, because that'll also save all of my settings, because I like to fiddle around with like Ultra Nightmare and like tweak a couple of those other things as well. And so that's one where it actually does the best of both worlds, where I can kind of carry over some of those settings that I want to, but then it doesn't screw it up when I move between platforms.
Yeah. Well, speaking of moving between platforms, Russ said just a second ago that he's been, I don't remember where I was going with that, but a bunch of different stuff. It says here in the show notes that you've been testing a bunch of stuff, and this is the part of where the game where part of the game. Good God, I got to learn how to speak. This is the
It's
part of
summer.
the show where we talk about the games that we've been playing. All right, Russ,
Wow.
what have you been playing, man?
So I have been playing 20 minutes of a lot of different games because I've been doing game testing. So I've so I had the ROG Nuck last week that I reviewed, and that thing I had for about a month or so. And so I just, was running through a lot of like high end PC gaming for the most part, and then emulation too. And then I'll have another one that I'm working on. The video will come out on Friday for another similar mini PC that has the same GPU inside. It's got a 4070 laptop GPU inside. And so I've been doing those same suite of tests, but with a new device now and pushing it even further. And so yeah, just a lot of 20 minutes of every game, running through the same castle ruins of Elden Ring, that kind of thing. So, but it's fun. Like it's weird. It's like a weird comforting thing for me. It's like playing the first level of Super Mario Brothers 3 over and over again. Like I like doing that because I just like to see if I can hit the turtle shell every time, I can get every coin, like all these little things. I'm not speed running. It's more just kind of like this cathartic way of just kind of spending 5 minutes or whatever. And so I don't mind like doing the same kind of routine over and over again. Like a good example for me too is like Ridge Racer PSP is one of my favorite racing games of all time, and I only really know that first track. Like I can kind of get pretty good in the second track, but that first track I know every inch of it, and I actually just enjoy playing that. And so someday I'll get to the other ones, but I don't know. It's been years at this point, and I just play that first one over and over again, see if I can get the best time. And again, not trying to beat anybody else other than myself. And so, yeah, so just a lot of game testing this past week.
It's funny you mentioned racing games, and I just got all of my ROMs and stuff installed on because with the ROG Ally X, I bought a 4 terabyte M.2 drive. I put it in there. I'm not doing dual boot, so I'm not using up any space for Windows. So I have tons of room. I installed like almost every game that I have. Like,
wow.
I think I got like 80 games on there from Steam, and they're not the small games. They're the big ones. But then I installed EmuDeck, and I put all of my ROMs on there, and I was using black frame insertion and messing around with stuff. But then I was just kind of going through all of the games that I have, and I was like, oh, you know what I remember playing a lot when I was young is Daytona USA. And I loaded it up, and that game does not hold up. Like I loved Daytona USA when I was younger. Well, okay, I don't want to say that it doesn't hold up. What I noticed is when I was playing it, I was running into it didn't control as good or as tight as modern racing games do. And I feel like it almost makes me think like older racing games, maybe they just weren't as good control wise. And I don't know if that's the case or not, but when I was running into the wall a lot, and I've been playing a lot of Gran Turismo 7 lately on my PS5. So I thought, oh, I'm kind of in racing mode. I should do okay, but I did not do okay playing Daytona USA, which maybe the best thing about that game is that amazing song.
Were you playing on Dreamcast or Saturn? Dreamcast?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I think Dreamcast.
Yeah, it's so much fishtailing in that game. Like I have a hard time with that one too. And it's funny because there's like even that first track, which does not have a lot of turns, I can just screw every turn up for some reason, and it's just like you're either going 0 or you're going 80% steering. Like there's like a hard kind of, I've heard people say, well, it was made for a steering wheel, and so it's like a different experience, but that's the home console version. It's still pretty rough. And so, yeah, those older ones are pretty hard. I think that I like the steering in Sega Rally Championship better. It is also still kind of punishing if you fishtail it too much, but it's not like Daytona USA, which is just on or off, and so that's the one I prefer to play. If I am going to play like a 3D racer, that's a Saturn game. And so I like that one. There's Sega Rally 2 on the Dreamcast, but I don't like that one as much.
There's a new racing game coming out. I can't remember the name of it. But it looks like it's based on or inspired by or an homage to the old Sega Rally games.
Oh, really?
And I keep seeing it show up like on Twitter and on Threads and wherever, where like the dev is like showing like little clips of it. I can't remember the name of it. It's on Steam, and I'm trying to find it right now, but it's next time that you are talking about something for an extended time, I'll try and look at the same time and see if I can bring it up. But it looks really, really cool, and it's definitely a game that I want to pick up, and it may or may not be out yet, but that's definitely something that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I like those like recreations of new games. Like I loved Star Fox on the Super Nintendo. I should clarify and say I didn't like playing it, but I loved like seeing it because it was so amazing looking back then. But it was just really hard for my little brain to kind of figure out. But nowadays I love playing it. And I love like Whisker Squadron Survivors, which is like very Star Fox-esque, but then also has like Vampire Survivors elements to it. And so I love it when people update a game. So if people are updating Sega Rally, and it's got a very similar feel to it, that sounds pretty awesome to me.
Yeah, and it definitely looks like that, but I can't find it. If I find it later, I'll put it in the description on the little YouTube thing. The other game that I've been playing this week, not a lot, just a little bit, has been Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. And the reason that I started playing that, although I have a complaint about it, the reason that I started playing that is because I saw it on Humble Bundle, had like this CRPG bundle where you had tons and tons of, like, there's Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale and Pathfinder Kingmaker and Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous and a bunch of other stuff. And so I had already owned it, and I reinstalled it on my ROG Ally X running Bazite, and I loaded it up, and at the very beginning it says, if you want to use a controller, press A. I'm like, okay, so I press A, worked just fine. Then I installed it on the Steam Deck because I wanted to see how does this perform on the Steam Deck, because it's got that gorgeous OLED screen. I want to see, all how those colors pop, and it said press A to, if you want to play with a controller, press A, because this game was originally designed with mouse and keyboard in mind, and then they shoehorned in controller support afterwards. And I'm mashing A and ain't nothing happening. And it's very, very frustrating. So then I tapped the screen, and it was like, oh, they clicked the screen, so they're using mouse and keyboard. No, you can't do anything with the controller now. So I'm like, no. So I played it a little bit on the ROG Ally X, and it runs great. I can't remember the frame rate that I was getting off the top of my head, but it was definitely playable, especially as a turn-based, CRPG. That game is really good. It's fully voice acted. It's based on the Pathfinder like tabletop gaming rule set, and you're like this whatever class you pick, but you're like, I picked a cleric, and so I'm a cleric that went into this town, and I'm doing tutorial stuff, but I got hurt, and then they brought me into the town and took my weapons, very Metroid like, where they take all your stuff. And then something happens, and then you are on your own, like deep underground, and you got to fight your way back out with the people that you meet along the way. And it's a really cool game with very, very, very Baldur's Gate style gameplay. So
I was looking at it,
if that's your jam, then Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous is very good. I also own Kingmaker, probably through a Humble Bundle at some point. I haven't played that one yet, but Wrath of the Righteous is very, very good.
Yeah, I didn't play computer games growing up, and so like this kind of thing is just so foreign to me. But I did try to get my hands in Divinity 2 or whatever that one's called.
Divinity Original Sin 2. Yeah, that's a really good game.
So when I was first getting back into gaming, this is like the start of the pandemic. Like I finally had built my own gaming PC, and I was like, all right, let me like see what I've been missing out on. And I'm like, what are the like top, like I was really into GOG at the time just because I had a friend who worked there. And so I was like trying to be, loyal to him and stuff. I'm like, oh, let's look, what are the like most critically acclaimed games that you can get on GOG? And that was like way up there. And I'm like, I never heard of this. And so I got it, and yeah, it's so hard. Like it's one of those where I'm like, okay, I'm getting it. I can't wait to play this later. And then I never play it. That's how I am, like so often, where it's like, okay, I got it. Like I can appreciate this, and there's going to be a time where I'm going to really enjoy this. And then that time never comes. So
You know, you bring up Divinity Original Sin, too, and I would say that is the kind of game, like, you should try playing that with either your wife, if she plays games, or with one of your kids, because it has split screen multiplayer.
Wow. Yeah.
So, like, they split the screen in half. You're doing your own things, but then is really cool. They have this. They have like in the conversations. So, like, let's say you and I are playing together, and we go into a dungeon or whatever, and we meet, like, I don't know, the boss of the dungeon, right? And we're talking to that boss of the dungeon instead of killing him, and and he makes us an offer. You know, work for me instead. And I decide, you know what? I think that's a good idea. So I'm going to choose that dialogue option that I want to do that. And then you're like, well, my character would never do that because they're honor bound. This is onions are gross. I'm a good guy. I'm never going to do something like that. So I would say no. And then if I remember correctly, the game will like roll a die to see who actually spoke up first or whatever, and then that's the path that goes along. So there, but there's also like arguments that happen back and forth between the characters that you and the person that you're playing with get to pick commands from. And again, this is all from memory, so I could be remembering things wrong, but it's a very cool multiplayer experience, so you might want to check that out.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And that's always the allure for me with these CRPGs in general. It's just like that you can make your own adventure as part of it. You know, it's very D&D to me. And so I like that idea. I just, I don't know, like Baldur's Gate 3 is another great example where it's like I am stuck at a certain part in that game now where I don't remember where I was going and I made a bunch of bad decisions to get there. And so I'm ready to restart the game, you know. So now I just use it for graphics testing and stuff with the other stuff. But I need to start up a new save game and just kind of run through it again and see how the adventure changes as I like make different decisions. I think that'll be pretty neat.
Yeah, it's fun because like there's somebody at work that also plays games, and we'll often talk about video games. And we were talking about Baldur's Gate 3. We were having that conversation where I did this thing, and they were like, well, why? How did you do that? Like, we had that conversation of, like, we both hit the same beats, but we both picked very, very different choices along the way. And so we got extremely different games, which is probably one of the reasons why Baldur's Gate 3 is one of the most played games on Steam, still a single-player game. Well, not only single-player, but after all this time...
Yeah.
Because you can go back and do it again and get a very, very different experience, which I love.
Yeah, the fact that I put 20 hours into where I am and I'm willing to start over, like, says a lot about the merit and quality of that game, because I will not generally do that in general. So,
well, those are the games that we've been playing, but let's move on to this.
Hello, look. Hey, listen.
So we have Gamescom going on literally as we speak. Russ and I have not had a chance to watch it, but I did grab this thing that says everything announced so far. So we're recording this Tuesday afternoon, and right now we have Gamescom, which is this big thing over in Germany, and they are doing a bunch of announcements. And so far we got a few announcements that people are excited for. Number one, despite the terrible reviews of the movie, the next Borderlands game has been revealed, and it got like a little trailer. Are you a fan of the Borderlands games, Russ?
You know, it's really interesting because there's some elements to it that are very similar to Destiny, if you think about it. You know, the like whole like loot kind of, and there's just so many weapons and things that you can pick up. But I don't know, something about it makes me overwhelmed because there's too many guns. And so I've played a good portion of Borderlands 1 and 2, and yeah, it's always overwhelming. I get to the point where I'm like, okay, this is too much game for me. Let's try something else. And so I love it. I love the cell shadedness as well. I've always been a fan of
Yeah,
cell
it's
shaded
beautiful.
stuff like Wind Waker and like the 13 or X111 game on the GameCube as well. Like I love cell shaded games. So it's always looked really amazing. And another reason why I've always felt like I should like Borderlands is because Mikey Newman, who's like a YouTuber, he makes these video series called Film Joy, where he talks about just like the joy of certain films, and he does these really beautiful like 20-minute critiques of these movies. He wrote like a lot of the storyline and dialogue and stuff for some of those early Borderlands games, and so I've always felt like, okay, like I should be playing this game. Like there's so many reasons why, and then yeah, it's just that paralysis or analysis paralysis where I've got just too many choices for guns, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to give up any of these, and so. Yeah.
Yeah. The way I look at it is it kind of plays like Diablo. You get new loot, you throw the old loot away, or you sell it, or you melt it down for parts or whatever.
Right.
And that's the same thing that happens in Borderlands. I will say that I never played Borderlands 1 or 2. The first one that I played was Borderlands 3, which most Borderlands fans will say that's the worst one. I loved it. I had an absolute blast with it. I played it from beginning to end. I finished it. I never finished games. That game was very, very fun to me. I didn't get the DLC for whatever reason. Like, I guess I was past the point where I was really excited about it anymore. But a lot of people didn't like the third one. I thought it was great, and I'm excited for the fourth one. I wasn't sure if we'd get a fourth one or not based on the reception of the third one and then the reception of the movie, which I haven't seen. I don't know anything about, but I think that Borderlands 4, I'm excited for it, and I loved some of the guns that I got in Borderlands 3. Like you would find guns that could shoot out guns. And then those guns would turn into little tripods, and they would shoot at the enemies that you're firing on. It's like there's really cool stuff in there.
Yeah, I really like
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I really like the like spontaneity and like the creativeness of those weapons and stuff. And I will say too that like the Russ who played Borderlands 1 and 2 is a different Russ than today. You know what I mean? Like that was on like Xbox 360 or whatever, and had young kids and was, active duty military and working like crazy hours. And so I didn't have, and I was a cookbook author. And so like I didn't have a lot of attention span for games in general at the time. So it didn't really mesh well with me now or then. But, Borderlands 4 seems like a perfect time for me to actually get into it.
Then they have Dying Light, the Beast. I have zero interest in Dying Light. Are you a zombie guy?
I don't know anything about Dying Light. I have this one and like that other Days End or whatever. Like I have all these mixed up in my head. I don't know which one is which.
Yeah.
So.
Well, they all have like 2-word titles. There's a D in there someplace.
Right.
They're
Everything's gray.
And they're zombies.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. They all feel like the same game to me. All right, we can move past that one. Dune Awakening. This one I'm excited for. Not necessarily because I love Dune all that much. I haven't seen the second movie. Don't yell at me. I want to see the second movie. I just haven't gotten around to it. The first movie didn't grab me. As somebody who never read the books, I was like, I don't know what's happening right now. I've heard that the second movie kind of makes the first movie make more sense, especially for people who've never watched the first one. But when I was at PAX East this year, I had to think if it was this year or last year, I got to go into like a closed door meeting with or a session with the people who are working on Dune Awakening. It's an MMO, third person shooter, survival MMO, where you have a certain amount of time before the world resets. And it just keeps doing that over and over. The world will keep resetting. And what they showed there looked really cool. They just put out a new overview trailer, and I'm very excited for this game. My son's excited for this game too. I think that Dune Awakening looks to scratch that itch, that survival itch that I always seem to have. But I don't know if it'll appeal to enough people to get that lift. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it looks, I'm watching the gameplay right now. It looks almost like a BioWare game. Like it feels like a little bit of Knights of the Old Republic, a little bit of Mass Effect in the shooting, even a little bit of Anthem and like the jetpacks and stuff. And so, yeah, I could see a lot of parallels between like BioWare games, and we've been it's been a while since we got a good one, you know, and so I like that idea. I'm a huge fan of the films in particular. I love the Denis Villeneuve, like the filmmaker. And I enjoyed that first book a lot as well. And so, yeah, I like the idea of going back into the world. But the thing that kind of makes me hesitate is it says, just in the description of the link that you sent, it says crafting is a big part of the game. And I'm like, that sounds like work.
Yeah.
That's just me again. But yeah.
In the game, you obviously you go out into the wastelands or whatever, you collect materials, and then you can use them to put things together. And one of the things that you can do, like one of the things that they showed off in that closed door session, was you can build like a jetpack, right? Like you saw before. And you can also have like a gravity belt. So you can use the jetpack to like boost yourself up and then slow fall down, almost like
nice,
a warlock in Destiny. That kind of
floaty
movement. Very, very cool looking. But then there's and you're right about the crafting, but then you have like the base building stuff. So you can sit there and you can build like this huge intricate base, but then you can turn that base into blueprints and then sell it on the market to other players. So then they can say, oh, I'm going to spend 3 million credits or whatever, I don't know, on this blueprint. And then they pop it out and they can build their base to start building up that stuff and decorate it the way that they want, which I always think is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, I like the idea of being able to just let someone else do the work. So that's great. Again, I got nothing against like crafting and, you know, building and stuff like that, but it's if it was the only game I was playing, that would be awesome, you know. But there are just so many games that I see that and I'm like, oh, you know, like I'm the kind of guy, I've mentioned this before, but like I play a game a year. I'm into a game and I play it a lot. And so this just looks like it necessitates a deep dive, which is a good thing, you know, for gamers. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck. But it's also that like barrier to entry for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked on this show at length about Monster Hunter. Do you have any interest in Monster Hunter? Because if not, I'm not going to talk about it again.
I don't know much about it. I always just liken it to like kind of like grown up Pokemon, you know, and like this Capcom kind of feel to it as well. And so, yeah, I've never played any, but, and again, it's one of those, I mean, you've even mentioned it before. Like, I'm like, which one should I start with? And you're always like, I think Rise is the one you say. And so
that's my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just haven't ever got to it. I actually own several of them on Steam, but again, barrier to entry, because it's just, it's hard to jump into a franchise sometimes, you know, where you're like, oh, you know, like I need to go to Wikipedia, read all of its lore first so I know what I'm getting into.
Well, first off, don't waste any time reading lore for Monster Hunter. And I know there's going to be a bunch of Monster Hunter fans out there that are going to be like, I can't believe he just said that. The story sucks. Like, that is not why you play these games. You play these games for the gameplay loop. I'm going to go kill that thing. I'm going to carve it so that I get some parts of it, and I'm going to take it back to the blacksmith. He's going to make me a new sword. And then I'm going to take that new sword and go kill the next thing, carve it, bring it back, and you just do that over and over and over again. It's very, very satisfying, but like the story is just it's like 12 kinds of dumb. Like, it's just like, okay, stop talking, skip. There are some charming things though. Like you also will get like these little cats that walk around and hang out with you and fight with you. They're called palicos, and they're cool.
Sounds awesome.
But they also cook you food, and the animation is always fantastic when they're cooking you food. Civ 7. Are you a Civ guy?
I've tried to play through several of them. I don't think I ever really got it, you know, in that like the journey itself is kind of part of all of it, you know, like I always was so goal oriented, like I got to win, you know, like whatever winning means in a Civ game, that I've never really done very well with it. And so, yeah, I'm one of those, again, it's like I need a whole year to play Civ 7 and I don't have that. So,
yeah. It's the kind of game where I always think to myself, oh, you know what? I can play this and I'll do like 10 turns. I'll come back tomorrow, and that won't take very long. Yeah. Or however many turns. And I come back tomorrow and pick up where I left off and do a few more turns and then come back the next day. But the thing is I do the 10 turns the first day and then I never come back the second day. Or if I do come back, I'm like, shoot, I don't remember what the hell I was doing. I can't remember where everything was. Like, I had a plan and I can't remember what that plan is. And so it never grabs me, but I always try to love it. I have a friend who he had Civ 3, I think, and he had a notebook and he would write down as he played the game, he would write down the story of his civilization in his little notebook, which was really cool. I could never do that.
Yeah,
He also
that sounds like the right way to play
kind
the game.
Yeah, it probably is. He's also the kind of guy that will listen to baseball games, which I could watch a baseball game. I could never listen to a baseball game. That's crazy to me.
That's fun.
We got some new stuff coming for Starfield, Shattered Space. I have no interest in it. I don't hate Starfield or anything. It just never grabbed me.
Yeah.
You?
I started up. I actually wiped my save game and started over maybe last month, and so I'm still kind of in the beginning stages. This is making me feel a bit more urgency because this Starfield is a game where it's like that actually almost feels like the game I want to play this year kind of thing, like the scope of it and everything, the promise of it. And now that it's been enough time that a lot of the bugs have been updated and whatnot, like it feels like a good time to start over. And so, but seeing the expansion part is like, oh crap, like I'm behind the curve, But I still, like, even when playing, even the first, like, I think I played maybe 4 or 5 hours of Starfield initially, like in the launch. I was so intrigued by that story. I was like, I actually want to find out what these guys are. Like, what are these parts and how do I put them together and what is going to happen, And I've been avoiding spoilers this whole time. And so I actually do kind of want to see how that story kind of falls into place and everything.
Well, speaking of Starfield, the place that I played it was on Xbox. And Xbox had this weird bug that showed up earlier this week. I think it was on the 15th, so about 5 days ago. Tom Warren tweeted about it. And it was showing Windows games were showing up in the store. You couldn't download them. You couldn't install them. But they were appearing in certain store sections of Xbox consoles. Now, they have been saying, like, they're saying this is a bug and it's been fixed, but this, I mean, we had, oh my God, I can't remember his name. The main guy for Xbox, Phil Spencer?
Yeah, Phil Spencer. Yeah.
Phil Spencer, thank you.
We need
Phil
Rich on
Spencer.
here. He knows all the names.
I always mix them up, him and Phil Schiller, because Phil Schiller works at Apple, and they both have those names. But anyway, Phil Spencer had kind of talked about, it'd be nice if we could put other stores on the Xbox, and we've talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
Do you think this is really just a bug because Xbox on Windows is so kind of interwoven that just was a bug that it showed up on Xbox? Or do you think this is because they were doing stuff and they're getting ready to launch this?
Yeah, maybe they were messing around with the sandbox and like seeing if it would work or whatever, but this is not a whoopsie, like whoops, like that just happened, like there's too much work involved in getting like an entire storefront to show up on an Xbox storefront. I think it couldn't really just be like, oh, we put in one wrong line of code or whatever, or it's a bug that happened on its own. It does feel like, they're and even the fact that like it is something they've talked about that they want to do is expand and, give better value to customers and whatnot. Yeah, I would say that they're probably testing something and then it just the bug is that it got out too early,
Well, I mean, I don't remember what you said the last time that we talked about this, but is that something like, I think that that's an exciting idea, being able to run PC games on my Xbox, because I always try and turn my PC into a thing that goes under my TV instead of, because I don't want to be at a desk if I don't have to. So like, that's exciting for me. Is that something you're hyped for? Or are you like, well, I got enough stuff. I got enough devices. I don't care.
No, like it's totally is like the idea of having a console And I don't care if what I'm playing is a PC game or an Xbox game. If I'm playing it on my Xbox, it's an Xbox game at that point. You know what I mean? The whole idea is that I can play it on my couch with a console without fiddling with settings, without actually like going through and installing an exe file. All of that sounds good to me. Like, I like the idea of just expanding the amount of games you can play, and I don't really care about their source. And so, yeah, if they can do something like that, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. Something else related to that I actually had planned on talking about earlier in the show when we were talking about, Windows on Steam Deck is that Windows. Gosh, I wish I had the story in front of me, but Windows had recently done a thing where it's supposed like the game bar menu, and they are streamlining that game bar menu to be more controller friendly. Did you read about that?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that looked pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think that, like, I don't know about you, but for me, the biggest issue with Windows is just it's not a controller friendly UI. And
Right.
so if they can make it a controller friendly UI, here's my question to you, Russ. If Microsoft can make it a controller friendly UI, does that stop you from installing Bazite on or Steam OS on other handhelds that you have?
Yeah, I could. It definitely could. I mean, the sleep thing is always a big deal too. Like, they would have to really
That's true.
get a hold of that whole sleep hibernate thing. I know there are ways you can kind of fine tune things and whatnot. I just like that I can push the button in Steam, and so. But the thing is, like, the menu interface on the Steam Deck is not like revolutionary, like pressing a button and bringing up a menu. Like, it just works. And that's the thing that's important. And so if on Windows, you can get it to just work. I mean, honestly, Armory Crate is easier to use and navigate than Microsoft's own solutions. And so that says a lot about Windows, and yeah, if any of these, like Armory Crate, Xbox, anything actually gets to that plug and play experience, then I think that's probably going to be the one that wins out. And they're all working on it, but no one's really landed it in the same way that SteamOS has, especially with that whole sleep thing.
I think the only ones that could really actually make it work would have to be Microsoft. And the reason why is because, like, just like when I talked about with Final Fantasy 16, where it popped up on my screen, you don't have the right graphics drivers, and then I had to click OK or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like Armory Crate can't make that easy.
Right.
Legion Space can't make that easy. Only Microsoft can make it so that when it detects that a controller is connected and being used, that it changes that dialog box to be a button press instead of reaching over and pushing the touch screen. If Microsoft,
it's almost like,
go ahead.
I was going to say, it's almost like, so taking it to a cooking analogy, right? A chef opens up a fridge and he's got those ingredients and he's like, okay, what am I going to make with this, right? And that's Asus and Lenovo and everyone else are like, all right, this is what I got to work with. What kind of meal can I make out of it that's going to be good? Microsoft could come in there and fundamentally change it. Be like, you know what? Let's go shopping and we'll get more ingredients and we'll get, new things or whatever. And that's where Microsoft needs to do. They need to make that fundamental change that everyone else can kind of piggyback on. And so I totally get it.
And we keep harping on the fact that they haven't made that change. Like, come on, what's taking you so long? But the thing about Windows is it has all of that legacy support that if they make too many big changes too quickly, that could really cause problems for them. Right. So I understand why they have to take baby steps, but it's just frustrating when playing Bazite on my ROG Ally X, and it's just like so seamless. And it could be seamless on Windows too if Microsoft would just, I don't know, do it.
Right. Because the thing is, like, you think about Windows, I would say, I don't have any stats or anything, but I would say the majority of Windows users are using it for work as opposed to like gaming, and that's not a thing on SteamOS. There are some gamers who are like, oh yeah, I can use this as my primary desktop. I just have to sudo this and sudo that. But that's like a very small minority compared to those who are actually playing just games on it and using it as a console. And so that's a big paradigm shift. And yeah, they've got to account for the, whatever percentage of people on Windows who are just logging in at work and need everything to work, And so they don't need the game bar. And so that's one of those things where they have to kind of figure out how to roll that out.
Yeah, I agree with that. You tweeted this out, which I thought was pretty interesting because we had 2 weeks without a show, and that was because I was busy doing stuff. And in that 2 weeks, romhacking.net basically ended up shutting down. We don't know why. My initial reaction to romhacking.net was, oh no, Nintendo's at it again. But it had nothing to do with Nintendo. It just had to do with like the guy who was running it had a falling out with the people who were working on his Discord or something, and then he just said, well, screw it, I'm just shutting it down because I don't want to deal with it anymore, which is perfectly reasonable. He doesn't want to do it anymore. He can just shut it down. It's his damn website. If Russ decided I'm going to shut down retrogamecore.com, which you guys should all go to and check out, then he can do that because it's his website. But anyway, you tweeted this out about romhacking.net. You want to tee this up?
Yeah, so this guy, OK Impala, so I think he's made a bunch of his own ROM hacks, as well as I think he's working on like his own Game Boy game as well. He just has a website, and he's like, you know what, like with all this stuff going on, I'm just gonna list out my favorite ROM hacks for Nintendo. He started with NES and then went on to the Super Nintendo, and I'm just gonna host those files there so to make it easier for everyone to find. And so he's done that already for Nintendo and Super Nintendo. There's about 25 games on each list. It's not a perfect list. Like, I wish he went into detail about why he thinks all these are good and what they do over the others and stuff like that, or over the original game. But it's still pretty cool that somebody has hosted them and like, you know what, we got all this whole romhacking.net thing going on. And, you know, the guy who owns that site put it on archive.org, and there's like another website that's already kind of like rehosting everything and whatnot. All that's in works. And, you know, I'm sure we'll get a solution in the coming months and years where it's like, okay, we're back where we were. But this guy's just like, you know what? Like, let's just do it myself, you know? And so the reason why I really love this is because this is the spirit of what started me with Retro Game Core in the first place. You know, I had my first handheld, and there was like 20 different websites I'm going to where I'm picking a little bit of this, a little bit of that, learning things as I go. And none of it was really like, all that work I put in, I was like, somebody needs to know about this, you know? And so then I made my own website and I put it all together and give credit to everyone and whatnot. And so I love that he's doing this kind of thing where he's like, you know what, screw it, I'll just do it myself. And so I love that he's sharing this love of these ROM hacks, like, for everybody. Yeah. And he actually said, oh, thanks for the shout out in my tweet. And so I was like, I'm hoping we see Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance someday. You know? So that was about it.
So, okay, I have to admit, I've never played a ROM hack. Like, I've played a lot of emulation stuff, but I always, like, I don't want to go back and play the retro games because I want to try something new. I want to go back and play the same thing that I played when I was young because, you know, nostalgia. Nostalgia is a powerful drug. And it makes me wonder, like, what are your favorite ROM hacks? Like, what's the one that I should absolutely check out?
So the two that I probably play the most are going to be, they're both Game Boy. So the first is called Tetris Rosie Retrospection. And so this is just Tetris on the Game Boy, but it has the ability to hold, like, so you can, I forget what a button is, maybe select. And so you can hold a piece. It'll also show you like a little, like on Tetris DS, it'll show you like a little silhouette of your piece at the bottom. So you'll know where it's going to land when it does. And you can press up to do an instant drop. And so that's it. And so it's just like quality of life updates. If you don't want, I actually always put both on my devices so I can like choose, am I going to be 1989 Russ or am I going to be, you know, modern Russ? And so, I go back and forth between the two. But that's one of my favorite ROM hacks. And then another one is there's Super Mario Land 2 DX. And so this is the golden coins, like 6 golden coins game for Game Boy, but works on Game Boy Color with full colorization. So somebody just went in and updated and made it a Game Boy Color game. So I like that one too. You know, that one's a lot of fun. Other than that, you know, I've got a bunch like, so Final Fantasy 3 on the Super Nintendo, they have a Final Fantasy 6, which is basically got some, it's basically like a best of all the different versions of that game. So it's like changed out some of the translations. It's made some of the like leveling up a little bit less grindy, you know, things like that. And so I like those kind of games where it's like just a small complement to the game. I don't do a lot of like full on overhauls because I feel like a lot of those just don't look as good and feel as good as the original creation. And so if someone throws a new skin on it or whatever, that's not a really big draw for me. It's more about enhancing that original game.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you talk about Tetris, Rosie, whatever thing.
Retrospective, yeah.
Rosie's retrospective. I can't imagine myself playing that when I could just play a more modern Tetris game that already has those features. Like, what about it draws you to that over, I don't know, a Tetris that already has that stuff built in?
Yeah, a lot of that is just my like nostalgia, you know? Like I play Mario 2 on the NES. I don't play Mario 2 Super Mario All-Stars from the Super Nintendo. Like I play the old one, even though the other one's got like better music or whatever and better graphics. So it's always, for me, it's just a mix of the old and new, you know?
Fair enough. I guess the last thing that I want to talk about, I was going to talk about Activision shutting down Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered fan-made mod, because they got a cease and desist, which sucks. But I don't know that I have anything to really say about that. And I think with Rich and Carrie here, they would have more to say. Or you don't play that kind of game, right?
I love Modern Warfare, like the original
really?
Call of Duty 4, like Xbox 360. That's still my favorite tactical first-person shooter game. But
take it away then.
All I can say is that I woke up and this already had happened. You know what I mean? That's the thing about living in Hawaii is like the world moves on the East Coast especially, and then I wake up and I'm like, hey, what's going on, everyone? And everyone's getting ready for bed. And so I missed out all of this. I didn't even know there was a mod. I didn't know any of that stuff. I just read about it once it was already taken offline. And so, it is what it is. I bought the remastered version of Modern Warfare already, and I just haven't really played it. I've played through the Xbox 360 version. I don't know how many times. I really loved that game when it first came out.
See, I remember playing Medal of Honor and loving Medal of Honor. I never played Call of Duty, and then I eventually tried a Call of Duty. And the thing about the Call of Duty games, at least on multiplayer, I haven't really played the single player, but the thing about the Call of Duty games for multiplayer is that the time to kill is so short that it all just kind of comes down to who sees who first. Like if Russ and I are playing against each other and he sees me first, I'm dead, which is how it is in the real world, you know? But I prefer to play multiplayer shooters where Russ sees me, he starts shooting at me, and I can see my health dropping. I have time to, he's over there. I can react and maybe counter what he's doing. That is more fun for me than, see that 2 pixel tall thing off in the distance? That's an enemy. And if you're good enough, you can headshot them if you hit the top pixel, and then they're dead. That always bothered me when I played those kind of games. So I've always just been kind of no thanks on Call of Duty. But you know, you're singing the high praises of it. Maybe I should check out the remastered one, even though Activision was a bunch of jerks and took down this thing that would add a bunch of maps to it.
To be fair, I've never played multiplayer, any of this stuff. Like I just get killed immediately. You know, like it's no fun. I die and then I'm like, how did I die? And then I see a little replay or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's how I died. And then let's see how I die next time. You know, that's basically how I play multiplayer in Call of Duty. And so I've never really been into it. But I love the single player campaigns. It's weird because I don't know if you know this, but like there was 2 development studios back then. So there's Treyarch and Infinity Ward. Infinity Ward.
Okay.
And so Infinity Ward did Call of Duty 2 and Call of Duty 4, which are the 2 that I love the most. And so I'm not a big fan of 3. I'm not a big fan of like Black Ops and all the other things that Treyarch did and whatnot. And it's nothing against them or whatever. It just felt different. And, you know, Call of Duty 2 was my introduction to the whole franchise, you know, on 360. And so those are the 2 that like I've really loved. And Modern Warfare, it was really great. Like it just had a really cool just overall feel to it, and it felt like such a huge upgrade from the World War II games. You know, when this one came out, I was like, holy crap, this is like modern stuff, and it's all, you know, like Russia stuff. You know, I was a Russian linguist, so I was like, oh, this is cool, you know. And so I got a lot of nostalgia for those games as well, which is funny because they're kind of retro games, you know, nowadays. Xbox 360 emulation.
Was the Russian in the game actual phrases, or was it just a bunch of gibberish, like where they were like "Strasviti, Pajalsta," or was it like
Right.
actual phrases?
No, it was real Russian. Yeah, it wasn't
Okay.
like Ivan Drago in Rocky Four, you know, where he's just saying gibberish.
All right, I was just checking.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got one more story, and then I want to talk about two more things. The story is Xbox account linking to GeForce Now. So I don't. Have you used GeForce Now very much? I'm guessing in
Yeah.
Hawaii, it's kind of. Does it work okay in Hawaii?
It does not, but I used
Okay.
it on the mainland before I moved here. So we moved back in 2019. So prior to that, yeah, I was using GeForce Now, and yeah, it's pretty cool. It works okay here, but not super great. But I love that I can link it with my Steam account. So the idea of being able to link it with PC Game Pass on Xbox is awesome too.
Yeah. So the thing is you've been able to play these games on GeForce Now for quite a long time. And GeForce Now, if for those of you that aren't aware, it is a video game streaming platform where basically you pay them and you're renting your a place on a server, and then they render the game on the server and then they stream it to you. And they have like these things called super pods where that you have access to 4090s, and the graphics are friggin' beautiful and it looks really good. And because they're running the games at such high frame rates, the latency feels very low, at least for me where I live. Russ lives in Hawaii, so he gets, he's paying a little karma for that, for getting access to the palm trees and the beautiful weather year round.
That's right.
He gets a little less GeForce Now. That being said, you've been able to play your Microsoft PC games on GeForce Now for a bit, but you had to sign in every single time, which was an absolute nightmare, especially if you have like two-factor authentication. So what would happen is I would install GeForce Now, I would then log into GeForce Now, and then I would have to like go into, because of the way my accounts were set up, I think it was, I can't remember exactly, but because of the way my accounts were set up, if I wasn't playing something on Steam, I had to like go into multiple accounts and open my email and check my email and like say, oh yeah, that's my email address, and then get two-factor authentication. And you had to do that every single time you played a game if you weren't playing a Steam game. That's not going to be the case anymore. Now you'll just hit go on like it'll know what games you have access to because you can link your accounts. You just hit go and it's going to bring you right in. This is fantastic, especially because GeForce now that Stadia's gone, GeForce Now is easily the best performing streaming platform out there. Way better than, for me, than Xbox. So I think this is great news.
Yeah, the interesting thing here will be that, because we already have cloud gaming with Game Pass Ultimate, right? So you can just go on to Xbox and like stream your games through their service. And that can be sometimes great, sometimes not so great. But not every single game supports that cloud streaming. And so that would be really interesting to see is how the cloud streaming will work. Like you'll be able to play PC games that don't have cloud streaming on NVIDIA GeForce Now if they're supported on NVIDIA's platform. So that'll be pretty neat. Another really interesting thing that I learned is that the cloud streaming platform on Game Pass Ultimate is often not the PC game that you're streaming, but it's the Xbox game that you're streaming. And the reason why I figured this out was because I was trying to play Hellblade, and I figured, well, it's on Game Pass. I can install it via Game Pass on my PC, install it on my Xbox, and kind of go back and forth like I do with Starfield. And it does not work that way. So your save games will be independent of one another between those. So it's not cross-platform. And so I was trying to play the game on my PC, and I was like, the only way I can do this is to do cloud streaming, because that's the cloud streaming of the Xbox game. So my save game from Xbox can be played on my PC, but only through streaming. And it was just a nightmare in pixels and stuff, and so I was not able to actually play it. But that was a really interesting thing for me, is that I didn't realize that PC Game Pass, or not PC Game Pass, but Game Pass Ultimate is streaming an Xbox game, not necessarily a PC game, which is really kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I think that this is just PC games, not Xbox games. So a lot of times it's the same games, but now you'll have that your save files will transfer depending on how you started playing the game. I just think that's really good. real quick, we have some upcoming games that are coming out. So I'm going to. We're recording this on August 20th. So if we just look at the games that are coming out for the rest of this month, we've got Concord comes out on August 23rd. Dustborn comes out today. Black Myth Wukong comes out today. Any of those that you're interested in?
I mean, I'm definitely compelled to learn more about Black Myth because, like, it's just in the zeitgeist right now. You know, a lot of discussion about it and whatnot. And the gameplay looks pretty cool too, you know. And so I don't know if it's definitely not like a day one purchase for me or whatnot. But I am really interested in picking that one up eventually. And the other two I've actually not really familiar with at all.
Okay. Dustborn, I don't know anything about. Concord is Sony's new hero shooter that they brought out.
Yeah.
So we've talked about that before. I'm not super. If it was a free to play game, I would definitely check it out. But I'm not going to spend money on it unless I hear really good things, because there's plenty of hero shooters that I could already be playing. On August 26th, World of Warcraft gets their newest expansion, and I already pre-ordered that months ago because as soon as I found out that Chris Metzen. I don't know how into World of Warcraft you ever have been, Russ. Okay, so
Never played
Chris Metzen is the guy who was in charge of Warcraft lore. He was the voice of Thrall, the main, one of the main characters, and then he left to go, do stuff with his family for a few years. And then in that time that he was away, it came up that, Activision, or not Activision, but Blizzard was doing some horrible, horrible things. And I was like, well, I don't like what's happening with Blizzard there. They were doing some bad stuff. It was a bad place to work, and that was not good. But then Chris Metzen, after Activision got bought by Microsoft, Chris Metzen said, I'll come back if I can run World of Warcraft. So he's now back, and they're doing a trilogy of expansions that have a cohesive story going throughout the whole thing. So I'm very excited for that. It comes out on August 26th. Pre-ordered it already. Been playing a little bit just to refamiliarize myself with the game. But I'm excited about that. And then we have on August 27th coming to Steam, Xbox, is The Lord of Rings Return to Moria. Are you a Lord of the Rings fan?
I mean, I like the movies and the books and stuff, but I can't think of, other than do you ever play the movie games on PS2 or Xbox? They were Return of the King, and it was you full on play the movie scenes.
Where you were playing as Gandalf, on the wall in Minas Tirith.
Right, it would full on. It would show a clip of the movie, and it would be 480p. It looked terrible, and then it would just blend in, and all of a sudden you were playing. And back in the day, I got to be honest, on a CRT, playing it on PS2 or whatever, you're holy crap, I'm playing the game. Nowadays, it does not look good, but back then, man, that was a pretty amazing experience. So I did play through both Two Towers and and Return of the King. Those were great. Those last games I played. I haven't played any other Lord of the Rings games since then.
Yeah, this one takes place in the mines of Moria after the ring is destroyed, which that seems interesting to me because we're not retreading the same thing that we've already seen. But apparently that comes out on Steam and Xbox on August 27th. I guess it's already on the Epic Games Store and PlayStation already. I just didn't know about it. So that's interesting. And then we've got the other big games. We've got Visions of Mana coming to PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox Series X and S on the 29th. And then Star Wars Outlaws is coming out on the 30th. Now, either of those ones scratching your itch?
I'm very interested in seeing how Star Wars Outlaws actually plays. I've seen so much left and right, oh, this is great, this is terrible, or whatever. I don't know. I'm a pretty good judge of my own experience with games, and this is one of those where I feel like I want to play it myself. So I don't know how I'll be able to access that. I don't know if I want to pay, $70 to have that experience. But yeah, I'm really interested. This is one of those where I'm okay, this obviously looks like something that I will have to wait and play myself to really make a determination of whether or not I like it. But I don't know. I think it might be pretty good.
I'm excited about it. I don't know if I want to spend $70 on it, but I've been considering subscribing to Ubisoft Plus for a month. I don't know how much a month subscription is, but it comes with all of their games, right? So if I could play that for, because let's be honest, I mean, I'm not going to finish it. It's a big ass open world game, right? I'm going to get bored or distracted, or something shiny is going to show up, and I'm going to be like, "Whoa, look at that!" and I forget all about this game. And so I know there's, I'm going to say not a 0% chance, but a very low percent chance that I would get $70 worth of enjoyment out of it, just because of like me getting distracted. But if I can subscribe to Ubisoft Plus for $17 or however much it costs,
right?
I mean, that might be worth it just to test it out. Have you ever subscribed to a service for just to try out one thing and then shut it down afterwards?
I haven't done any digital services, but I did like GameFly. Like I used to do that all the time, you know, like I would just sign up for a month because a new game was coming out or whatever, get it and try it. It's just like Netflix, you know, and you get the discs mailed to you, you know, so I would try it out and be like, okay, you know, I spent my $10 or $20, whatever, this month to test out that game. And then I'd try out a couple others, and then I would be able to make a decision of whether or not to buy the game. And, you know, nowadays, like a lot of games have demos, which help. And then you can always also, you know, obviously watch someone on Twitch or whatever too. But there's nothing like just testing it yourself and really getting an idea. So that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not sure how much it costs either, but that would be a reason to try it out.
Yeah, I think so. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is, you know, we've got this section called This Week in Gaming History, and I'm scrolling through, and 28 years ago, 1996, The Legend of Dragoon was released. The DOS version in Taiwan? Oh, no, that's Dragon, not Dragoon. Okay, we'll stay on topic then. Warcraft 2, The Dark Saga, was released for the Sega Saturn. Yeah. I didn't even know that Warcraft 2 came to the Sega Saturn. Could you imagine playing a real-time strategy game on a Saturn controller? That's got to be a nightmare.
Because the original Saturn controller didn't even have like an analog stick. They had the 3D controller, which had one, you know. But you're using like an analog sticky D-pad, basically. And so the shield D-pad or whatever. Yeah, that would be rough. And I would assume it's not really well optimized for it. But I don't know. You know, people played like SimCity on Super Nintendo. People love that game, you know. And so, I don't know. Maybe they got it to work.
I remember playing Populous on the Super Nintendo. I think my mother got it for me for either for my birthday or for Christmas. I can't remember. And I played it and I was like, boy, this is terrible. And it's not because Populous is a bad game, but it was because it was that kind of game. And I was playing it I was moving a cursor around with a D-pad on a Super Nintendo.
Right.
Not a great experience. Real quick, any of the games from yesteryear jumping out at you?
I'm looking through. I'm already at 2009. I haven't none have grabbed me, and so, oh man, yeah. There's not. I'm not finding anything that I was like, oh yeah, I played that game, or I really was looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm at 2011, and I'm just gonna stop because at that point we're no longer retro. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. I remember The Thing come out on PlayStation 2. That was in 2002, and so that's on the list. I remember we actually bought that game. We tried it out, and we did like the GameStop Shuffle is what we used to call it. So you could buy a game used, and then within 7 days you could return it for whatever reason for store credit. And so like my buddies and roommates and stuff, they call it GameStop Shuffle. Every week you get a new game, you know, you play it, and you know, if the game's good enough you would keep it, but for the most part you usually would try to beat it in that week, and then you would return it and get a new one. And so your $60 could last you an entire year back then. And so that was a GameStop Shuffle game I remember my roommates had, and it was okay. I remember it being like just really dark indoors, and so it was hard to see things, and I was living in Hawaii at the time, and so like, you know, sun coming in and whatnot, not very good when you're trying to play a darker game like that.
I remember, you know, back in the early 90s, my first retail job, I worked at a Babbage's, which is essentially essentially a GameStop, you know. And one of the cool perks about having that job is that we had a shrink wrap machine in the back of the house. So you could open up a game, You could take it home, you could play it, and we were allowed to do this so that we could talk to the customers about it. So we would open up the games, take them home, play them, have a blast with them, bring them back in. And then as long as there was a copy, as long as there was more than one copy, you could do that. If they needed another copy, they would call and they would say, you need to bring this in. But we would be able to play games all the time. And then we would bring them back in. You put them in the shrink wrap machine and re-shrink wrap them and put them back on the shelf.
my gosh.
Yeah. But this
how is my disc already
discs.
scratched?
Yeah, there were no discs. This was cartridges. This is like 1992, I think. So like discs were very rare. It was all, it was, there were discs for PC games, but they were usually floppies and you could bring them home. And one of my friends that worked there would always make copies of those floppies. So he would bring it home, make a copy, bring it back to work.
Yeah. That's the first GameStop shuffle right there. That's pretty funny.
Anyway, so that's going to do it for this episode of the NerdNest podcast. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Russ, what do you got coming up on your channel?
So I've got a mini PC review coming out on Friday, and then I'm just waiting for the next Ambernic device to come out. It's like a vertical 4-inch device, and so I assume that one's going to land on my doorstep here this week. And so I've kind of cleared out my schedule so that way when it arrives, I can spend a couple days testing it out. And then, usually I'll make like an impressions video the first day I get it, and then like a few days later I'll make a review. I'm going to try to just make a review this time where I'm just like, okay, I've been living with it for a while. We already know the release date, which is going to be in 6 days. And so I'm hoping as long as I get it in the next couple days, I'll be able to have enough time with it that I can just do a full on review in time for launch, which is really rare because they always launch them so quickly. And so that's the goal, at least. So we'll see.
It's got the same chipset as, say, like the RG35XXSP, right?
Yeah, it's the 40XXV. So it's a 4-inch screen, vertically oriented, so it looks like a Game Boy. It has a single analog stick. So I'm assuming it'll be a pretty easy review because I just got to pop in my other discs or SD cards and be like, oh yeah, this one works too, that kind of thing. So it's really just a D-pad test at that point.
Yeah, we got to see how it handles the Contra test and whether or not it's Shoryukenable or Hadoukenable. And I always have trouble saying those. But anyway, that's going to do it for the podcast. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We've been going for almost an hour and a half. You could have been anywhere, but you decided to hang out with us, and I appreciate it. Till the next time, take it easy. Bye-bye.